The success of a dialogue lives or dies on setting the right tone right from the start. There is a skill and an expertise and an understanding about how you have the conversations in the right kind of way that specialists like Hopkins Van Mil absolutely own. Genomics England has been looking at the use of whole genome sequencing in the newborn context, so for babies that have just been born. Hopkins Van Mil really delivered in terms of new ways of doing things, the ability to kind of think really carefully, to include a lot of people in kind of creating and co-designing how this would all work.
We worked together to design quite a novel process for bringing in members of the public for a real, in-depth discussion about, quite a tricky issue.
The way that the sessions were set up was very important from our point of view in getting at the real decisions, real feelings that people had about this.
HVM, the team, really kind of put a lot of groundwork into making sure that the participants had that opportunity, that space to be able to dig into the issues that they wanted to discuss and the kind of areas they really cared about. We wouldn't have been able to do this on our own because we just don't have that kind of insight and that kind of skill.
To me, public deliberation, other forms of public engagement are fundamental to addressing some of the most important kind of policy and social challenges that we face in this world today. Working with Hopkins Van Mil, it felt very much like we were partners on a project together. It's one of the few projects I've worked on where the people that got involved really felt that they were part of something, and they weren't just like showing up to answer the questions and get their money and get their sandwich and go home. They were, we're part of the council, which was really wonderful. That's a real credit to the Hopkins Van Mil team for kind of creating that atmosphere and that environment. It's not an easy thing to do, to kind of create that sense of togetherness. People wanting to engage with me and ask me more questions about the Ada Lovelace Institute, about the dialogue, about Hopkins Van Mil. Participants are saying to you, this is really enjoyable, it's so interesting, it's so fascinating.
The Putting Good into Practice public dialogue was an effort by the National Data Guardian and Understanding Patient Data to find out and explore with members of the public what they thought about the idea of public benefit being a key driver for the way that health data is used for purposes beyond care, such as for research and for planning. Hopkins Van Mil really ensured that we had a constructive, positive conversation, even when there were conflicting views and tensions. And actually, it made for some of the most interesting, rich parts of the discussion when people did have those different views, because you got to really understand what was driving their views, what was driving their motivations and opinions. So we were really pleased to work with Hopkins Van Mil on this, because they helped bring that creative, curious connection to us on a topic that could otherwise be quite difficult for people to understand.
You have the first expert presentation, then you go into the first workshop, and it's kind of like, so what do you think about the topic? And there's always that kind of like, who's going to say the first word?
We're working in an area that can be quite technical, quite dry and a little bit abstract, and Hopkins Van Mil really helped us understand, with us, what it is people would respond to, what would resonate with them, what would enable them to understand the kind of quite complex information that we were providing.
It's working when they're understanding the questions that you're asking them and coming up with answers that you just hadn't thought of.
There's often a moment in a public dialogue where it's almost like the penny drops. Everyone is on the same page when it comes to their understanding of the topic at hand, discussing with one another a topic that maybe a few days ago they were completely new to. It
gave me the ammunition to go back to Genomics England and say to them, look how much really insightful, useful information you can have through having conversations like these with the general public. And that was down to, how efficiently and well Hopkins Van Mil managed that whole situation.
For me, it was a real career highlight. We came up with a good design, we had good experts there, but none of that's going to work if your facilitators aren't expert at their job, making sure everyone's having a say.
The facilitators were just as interested in the subject matter as we were, which I think meant that we felt like we weren't kind of forcing this boring, dry topic on a bunch of people, but actually there was something really interesting here. What was so great about the Hopkins Van Mil team is they just immediately kind of dispelled all of that and made it about a friendly conversation among people. It was that perfect blend of professional and informal.
What Hopkins Van Mil really brought to the process was a very human touch. Their passion for public dialogue, for producing really robust, high-quality reports and ensuring that people's views are genuinely taken into account is really inspiring. I've worked with Hopkins Van Mil on multiple occasions, either as a steering group member or as a commissioner, and I've always found them to be a fantastically helpful, collegiate, friendly and highly professional team. Their team has evolved over time and their expertise is only building.